Good morning and half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. Today is Monday, May 16, 2022, and the time now is 9:04. Notice for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Monday, May 9th, and followed by May 11th. Today is Monday, May 16, 2022, and it's 9:04. This morning, we'll be hearing on Bill 281-36, COR, introduced by myself, an act to appropriate $609,000 from the general fund to the Guam Election Commission for the purpose of conducting the 2022 primary election and early in-office voting. Physical note for tune was requested on March 29, 2022. It was received and disseminated to all senators via email, Committee on Rules on April 6, 2022. Those testifying on behalf of Bill 281-36 are invited to the panel. We have the Guam Election Commission, Ms. Maria Pangilinan, Executive Director. We have the Director of Department Administration, Mr. Ed Byrne. We have the Director of BBMR, Mr. Lester Carlson, and we have the Director of Revenue and Tax, Ms. Daphne Shimizu. The rules of engagement on this public hearing. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimonies may be read, and lengthy testimonies should be summarized to about 5 minutes. But if additional time is needed, you'll be allowed to continue. Those testifying will be allowed to present oral testimony. Once you're done, please remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by the members of the committee. Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda, which is on the appropriation of $609,000 for the purpose of conducting the primary election and early in-office voting. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of the general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing room. I'd ask that if the panel or any of my colleagues believe that there's any personal inference, raise your hand and we'll address that and we'll have the individual removed. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony or may be removed from the room. If there's no practice of proper form and decorum, you will be removed. You will not continue giving testimony. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and your title for the record. I'd like to acknowledge the senators my colleagues that have joined me this morning. We have Senator Jim Moylan, Senator Tony Ada, and Senator Tello Tairigui. I'd ask the Executive Director of the Guam Election Commission to please give her testimony in reference to the bill. Bill 281-36,
ma'am. Half a day, Mr. Chairman and Senators. The Guam Election Commission respectfully requests positive consideration of Bill number 281-36, a supplemental request of $609,000 for fiscal year 2022 for early absentee voting and the conduct of the 2022 primary election. On July 2021, Public Law 36-41 was passed with the intention of providing easy access to all eligible voters of Guam by permanently implementing early in-office absentee voting. The Guam Election Commission estimates the additional cost of early voting to be $276,000 per election. Cost will include the leasing of an approximate space of 4,000 square feet for the vote center, the hiring of 15 additional election workers, the cost of equipment and sanitation supplies, and other expenditures related to the conduct of early voting. On May 2nd, 2022, the GEC issued a notice of intent to award to the Guam Westin Resort as the location for the 2022 early voting center. To cover the cost of the 2022 primary election, the GEC requested $1.9 million, a difference of $284,000 from the fiscal year 2022 appropriation. Costs include ballot stock, coding and programming equipment rental, election security, DPW busing services, the utilization of DOE facilities, and other contractual services. The remainder of the $609,000 is attributed to the replenishment of supplies and materials utilized for the conduct of the 2020 runoff election and the estimated rising costs. A budget digest, staffing pattern, and a schedule of the contractual services and supplies and miscellaneous expenses are before you. Sidzu'us Ma'asi from the GEC for the opportunity to present before you.
Thank you. We do have the directors from DOA and BBMR, and if you want to make a statement, Mr. Carlson and Mr. Byrne, followed, and Daphne if needed.
Thank you, Chairman San Agustin and members of the panel. The fiscal note that we provided for Bill 281 basically notes that there's no offset in the current year budget, and it appears that there needs to be some clearer language as to the funding for the measure. It seems appropriate that the amount that Mrs. Pangilinan is asking for seems accurate, but with the lack of clarity, maybe we should interject the words from FY22 general fund revenues received over the adopted level, because then there would be no budget offset. The budget would still be balanced. That's really the only comment that we have, sir.
All right, thank you. Mr. Byrne, did you have anything you wanted to bring up, or?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would follow the comments in the fiscal note also.
Thank you. Ms. Simzu?
Nothing else to comment, Senator San Agustin. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd ask my colleague, Senator Moylan, do you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the panel. Guam Election Commissioner, thank you for the recommendation on the amount necessary to really ease the access for early voting. I guess our whole goal for Public Law 3641 was to have higher voter turnout. And so permanentizing this is the way to do it. Mr. Byrne and Mr. Lester there, thank you for the recommendation. I think that's something we can work over with the committee chair per your recommendations, since the funds that we just need to really identify, pinpoint where this would come from, and your recommendation is certainly welcome and appreciated. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Ada, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to the panel. Ms. Pangilinan, in your letter here, you stated that the Western Resort was selected for the early voting.
Yes, sir.
It is? So how's that operation going to work? They're just going to drive in under the...
Sir, today is the last day we wait for, we're required to wait 14 days for the award, just in case somebody wants to protest it. At this time, we are talking with them, Senator, because we're still waiting for today's the last day. Actually, we're not, we're supposed to wait until after the award, the actual award, that we can start talking about it. We know, what I can tell you is they were the lowest bidder. and they were responsive. So that's how come Weston was selected. We are working, our logistics folks are working with them as we speak to set it up so that it's it's the best for the voter. And I think I want to say now, at this point in time, all of us are worried about curbside voting. So we want to put it out to our voters that please make sure that if you are a person with a disability or somebody who cannot walk into the Westin, if that's where we're going to be, please make sure you come to the lobby, not to the lobby, but the upstairs level, I don't know what it's called, to vote. We don't want our manamku and our persons with disabilities to wait too long in the curbside line, the curbside car line. So at this time, you know, my staff have asked me to make sure we point that out, and this is one of the best venues to do it, is that our curbside line across the elections is strictly for persons with disabilities and for the manamku that, you know, cannot walk into the venue.
Okay. So this letter of intent then, or award for the Westin, is this both for primary and general election?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's the only question I had.
All right, thank you. Senator Tello, do you have any question for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to my colleagues, and of course, good morning to the panel that's here. The Westin, you know, it's kind of, everybody knows it's kind of difficult to get to the Westin in the first place. I mean, the parking's not good. You know, you go to the garage and you still have to, you know, walk through the stairs to get up. I mean, why the Westin, of all places, especially it's in Tumon, you know, it's in a location there. Why 4,000 square feet? No, I just read your testimony now. You know, I had all these questions prior, especially when it comes to the Westin and the amount that it's going to cost. I think we had a conversation, Maria, and you were talking about what we're anticipating. What did you say, about 13,000 voters, early voters?
Yes, Senator.
But that's 13,000 voters spread out from the time we start. By the way, when does early voting begin again?
July 28th.
28th, right? All the way into the primary, which begins August?
27th.
Okay, so about a whole month, right?
It's actually less than a month.
About 3 weeks?
Yeah, we're going to, we close, by law, we close 5 days before the election.
That's what I was going to say. So it's 5 days prior. Okay. So you won't be using this area at all for any kind of, you know, poll during the election. Then, you know how you have different locations for voting. So you would not be using the Westin at all during election day, primary on the August 28th. Is that correct?
No. At this point, Senator, no.
Okay.
We will have, you know, the bid specs require that we lease it from July 1st all the way to November. So we will still have control. If, you know, if there's something that we can use it for, we may be able to use it then.
It's just that the Westin is not very access friendly, you know, but why the Westin? I mean, couldn't you find another location that's more convenient, even more convenient next to the Election Commission? Is this the only possibility? I mean, and for the cost, and also where in the Westin would it be?
Okay. So let me answer your first question. We went through the procurement process. We issued out an invitation for bid. They came to be the lowest, and they were still responsive even with the lowest bid. So the second question as to where it'll be not in the lobby area, but as you drive in, instead of going down to the lobby area, it's the place where the buses normally park, just as you enter Weston from the traffic light. Right there, that's where it will be. Yes, there is an elevator that will service people voters from the lobby area, and people can also walk in straight from I think there's also an elevator from the parking that can take them right up to that level.
July 1st to November, to the end of the election, November
Yes.
6th, probably it'll end then, or
Maybe
July 1st to,
November. I
November.
don't remember when, ma'am. It may be the end of the month.
okay. The access is just very difficult. I mean, I know you're anticipating, like you said to me, 13,000 voters, early voters. Is that what you said to me?
What we have as early absentee voters for the 2020 election, and we anticipate. So that's what we're looking at.
But that's absentee. Those are off island as well, or just here on?
No, that's the ones that showed up at at GCIC last time.
Couldn't you find a smaller location? I mean, it's not like all 13,000 voters are all going to come at one time, that you need such a huge space for this.
You're talking about the 4,000 square feet, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. So we have to set up the voting booths. So when we set up the voting booths, they have to be spread apart so that we have, I think we set up 10 voting booths. No, maybe 12 voting booths. And those voting booths will contain, some of them will contain express vote machines. We've used all the time around 4,000 square feet in 2020. In 2018, we used our conference room. But
Right,
in the conference room, we only service a little over 1,000 throughout the 30 days.
Right. That's another thing. I mean, in the past, we've used GCIC building your conference room for early voting, you know, a smaller space, and it was just a smaller time frame too, right?
No, it was 30 days, but it was limited to absentee voters with excuse.
With excuse only.
So we only service around 1,000 voters prior to 2020.
$602,000 to have this early voting. It's quite a lot of funding for this. And in an area, I mean, it doesn't help those who are coming from the south, you know. I mean, to be a little bit more centralized would probably be the ideal situation, especially those coming from the south. But, you know, all the way north, it's just hard to swallow, considering, you know, all the costs that are coming in right now to this legislature, you know, with all the pay raises and we still have to consider the funding that, well, most of it's spent for the excess 22 without an audit. And that will throw me over to Mr. Byrne. FY21 excess revenue, the 62 million. It's kind of adding up, doing the add on how much is still available that has yet to be appropriated by this legislature. And I'm coming with a little over $1 million left for FY21. Is that what you're coming up with based on all those bills that were passed? How much funding from the 62 million in FY21 is available?
At the last Committee of the Whole, Senator, I think we decided there was no further funding from fiscal 21.
Do you have a list, Mr. Burns, of what was used for the 62 million?
No, Senator.
And you're saying there's just zero in FY 2021
That's what we decided at the Committee of the Whole, yes.
in the audit?
No, the Committee of the Whole,
Oh, I'm sorry, it's just so hard to hear with my
at the
folks.
Committee of the Whole, when we discussed it about 3 weeks ago, that was the conclusion that we came to.
That there was zero
Yes.
in that. So where do you think we're going to get this $600,000 to pay for this if, you know, the bill that was passed here today, if it passed, it says general fund. Where are you going to take this from?
I believe Mr. Carlson has the answer to that.
Okay, Mr. Carlson?
Thank you, Senator. As I earlier stated, I made a suggestion that the language of the bill might include some clarity that the funding will come from general fund revenues in fiscal 22 received over the adopted level. No more, as Mr. Burns said, we're done with 21. The $609,000, and Mrs. Pangilinan, you know, we already went through the IFB process. We're kind of married already, you know. It is what it is. My only suggestion was to clarify that it's from FY22 general fund revenues.
So basically, it's the excess revenue that's estimated to project about 68 million in excess revenue is what basically where it's going to come from. Well, okay, well, I don't know what else to say, you know, when you get left and right slapped with all this funding that's needed right now for, you know, it just boggles me, and especially the West End. You know, I've get a lot of calls asking why the West End. It's so difficult to get through the traffic in Tumon, et cetera. I said, well, it's still kind of COVID, you know, we don't have as many tourists, you know, hopefully it'll pick up, but it just, you know, a lot of inconvenience for those from the South, you know, trying to go for, go ahead, I know you guys were talking, go ahead.
Ma'am, Senator, be assured that that we tried and we wrote our specs so that to accommodate early voting as best as possible, but we also had to work within GovGuam procurement rules and regulations. With that said, we couldn't write it so specifically because if we did, we would probably write it specific to one location or two locations. So we did what we could. We are working hard to make sure that we bring up voter participation. So, you know, as the Guam Election Commission finalizes the plans for early voting, we want to assure the people of Guam that we will let you know and we will give you as many details as we can with the approval of our commissioners.
Okay, Mr. Chair, thank you so much. But just this last question, since you're talking about that, did you look into like places like Southern High School, vacant, you know, rooms at Southern High School, maybe at the University of Guam, maybe Manila, in Manila, the facility that used to be the public health building, you know, locations where the government of Guam already has an area there. Did you look into that?
The first place we looked into was the University of Guam. The field house, because that's what we use, but we cannot have it for that length of time. And please note that at the schools, at the time we're requesting for the timing of the primary and the general, school is already open. We also looked at gyms, but we require air conditioning. So this is what we've come up with. We did some market research. The other thing, Senator, is that if it's not going to be at the GEC offices, we have to make sure we protect the ballots. Hence, they're voted ballots. Hence, we wanted it as close as possible to the GEC office because we will be transporting the ballots to and from the early voting site.
Maria, how about the Manila facility there? Did you Did anybody bring up that suggestion?
Which one, ma'am?
The one in, that used to be public health in Manila?
Sir, ma'am, I think it's condemned.
No, we sent a
Okay.
letter out to DPW, and it has not been condemned. If you should check with DPW. In fact, they're trying to utilize that for something else for GCC. But no,
We can check.
do we still have time to, if we? I mean, because this is a huge amount of money, at this point. So.
Ma'am, it's 276,000 for the early voting center. The rest is for the rest of the primary election.
But it's coming out here 602,000.
Okay, so $276,000 for the early voting center.
Right.
For the early voting area. The rest of the money is for the rest of the primary election. So we had requested, I believe.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Maria, if you can save this government of Guam 276,000, then, check out the Manila facility, if that's available. It's very centralized. It helps, everyone. The parking is excellent. And that might be something you can look into. I don't know if it's too late for it, but, you might look into it. Talk to Vince Ariola over at DPW. He can give you the onset. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so
All
much
right.
for your testimony.
Thank you, Senator Tarigui. Senator Brown, did you want to ask any question of the panel of Ms. Pangilinan?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I think it's just, for me, just looking at the issues, just the location. I mean, ultimately, Weston's been selected. That's what's been announced publicly in the media, that I guess that would be the location. It's just accessibility. Us, we go to Tumont if we have to. I don't necessarily go to the hotels or like parking in the parking structures if I don't have to. Is there going to be other, I don't know if the question was asked, but are there other parking accommodations going to be made except for the parking structure? If that is, I don't know if that's ultimately a venue that's been selected.
We are working with Weston. We will be working with Department of Public Works and with other issues or challenges that we have with the parking. In our bid specs, we requested for 20 dedicated slots. Our biggest challenge would be curbside voting for the Menamku and for the persons with disabilities. We are working to address those issues.
I think that's just the biggest issue. And then, in the future, I sort of share the sentiment. I'm very conservative with spending, obviously. And it's like, the fact that we can't narrow down other government facilities to accommodate it, even if you spread it out on certain days for Central, Northern, Southern, or something, just to minimize the cost, because this is an additional cost that obviously takes away from other critical services in the government. And I will see how it goes. It sounds like the train has already left the station, but it is rather expensive. And I don't know if that was envisioned at the time the sponsors moved this bill to want to, and definitely, encouraging as many of our people to vote. We'll see. I don't know ultimately maybe people's frustration with government, why less and less people every election are voting. If this is going to encourage, it's a gubernatorial year, hopefully there'll be more people to turn out. But then maybe we need to go back and re-examine, is there a better, more cost-efficient way we can do this and still allow our voters? Because Marie, you guys, your staff did very well during the pandemic of accommodating us at the GCIC building. To be able, and even there, everyone could say it's limited parking, but it's centralized, and you were, those that needed curbside voting, your staff was there. They stayed under a hot tent all day, but they were there to accommodate, and I was, I experienced that myself with my family, because, my mom's and my uncle, and I'm fortunate I was able to vote with her because I'm in the same car, but you were able to process people, and if we had to go upstairs to vote, it was a very, outlined process. We were very easily directed by your staff what we needed to do, all the way down to seeing our ballot put in an envelope and sealed in the envelope and initialed and signed and put in the box. So people, know that the sanctity of their vote will matter and that's going to be properly processed and accounted for. So if we could do that at the GCIC building, maybe with your recommendation, we can look at the next election. What's a more cost-efficient way and accessible way for our people to be able to vote, and then, keep the cost down, because I'm sure there are other critical needs. We can all find a couple $100,000 to expend in this government. So that's really all I have, Mr. Chair, with regards to my comments on this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Brown. And, I agree with my colleagues. I'm Weston. It's a great place to go and eat. But for election, amazing. I thought at one point we were looking at the Guam Greyhound, a great parking lot. But unfortunately, you go to the procurement, and whatever comes out is what comes out. And I'm just surprised that the other venue did not participate. Because if they had participated, it might have been even lower. Because if it's an open parking lot, I don't know who participated, Ms. Pangilinan, but exactly what my colleagues mentioned, you guys have done a great job. Unfortunately, if the train have left the station and you're in the process of securing the location, I just hope that, I guess when Public Law 36-41 was passed, maybe we could have put something in there that would have identified where it needs to be. Centralized, be very specific, so that you wouldn't have to put in your requirements so it appear that you're leading where you want it to be. It would be by law. But with that note, the committee will continue we will conclude this public hearing and we'll make the appropriate amendment as recommended by Mr. Carlson and that the committee will continue to receive testimony. Please just submit your testimonies to the Mayor of the Guam Legislature or through email at Senator Joe S. Augustine @gmail.com. Again, I thank everyone for attending this public hearing and for providing feedback and suggestion. Bill 281-36 is duly heard by the committee and the public hearing is now adjourned. It is now 9:35. Please be safe and thank you for being here. And for the listening audience, advise that Bill 295 that was supposed to be heard today is being postponed. There is a committee report that I know my colleagues that asked, make sure it's there. And I did commit that if it's not there, we're not going to have the hearing. And we're not going to have the hearing on 295 because there is one report that's missing on the packet. All right, so 295 has been postponed. Thank you all for today.